Jack- Jackie may be able to watch this. So this is our third session about Book of Matthew, Gospel of Matthew. Last week, kind of um, we started, and then this chapter one, genealogy of Matthew's Gospel. It has a lot of information there, so I like to spend some more time uh, here. So the book I read today is it's called The Fourfold Gospel, written by Francis Watson. As I mentioned, this is a British scholar and New Testament scholar. It's a very interesting perspective. Okay, so I'm gonna give you some information from this book. So we have an Old Testament, right? 39 books are in the Old Testament, and then 27 books are in the New Testament. Have you ever wondered why Matthew's Gospel comes first in the entire New Testament?
Well, it's the gospel that talks about his birth.
Well, Luke's Gospel also talks about Jesus'
His
birth.
birth, yeah.
So,
I don't really know.
yeah, yeah. Prashant, any idea, thought?
Uh, no, I'm not able to recollect, Pastor. I
Ah,
know
ah,
that we reviewed a book called um, Reading the Bible. I forget the name. So there, yeah, I think yeah. I'll just wait for you to
yeah,
explain.
yeah. This is very interesting. I also learned something new from this book. So, well, according to scholars, um, the very first book that was written uh, in the New Testament, among the books of New Testament, it's not the Gospel. First Thessalonians was the first one to be written. Um, Scholars said, well, when Jesus died and resurrected, and then he went back to heaven, it was around 30 AD, 30 Common Era. So if Jesus was born around 4 BCE, this is what scholars think. He was born probably 4 BC, and then he lived 33 years. That means he died and resurrected around the age, around 30, right? And, when that happened, um, especially when the first Pentecost came, uh, they they were busy preaching here and there, and then they didn't feel a need to write it down because they all believe that
Hmm.
Jesus will return soon. When you believe he's gonna come back right away, why would you why would you write it down?
Hmm.
Hmm.
So so they didn't feel any need to write it down. They were just busy preaching, and then they go here and then they talk about it. And about 20 plus years later, somehow um, this book was written, this letter First Thessalonian was written. Maybe because the church has some issues within its community. So anyway, First Thessalonian was first written around the mid 50s, and out of four gospels, the very first gospel that was written was Mark's gospel, they said, because it is the shortest. So, and then it was written first. And then by the time the author of Matthew's gospel and Luke's gospel were preaching, they had Mark's gospel in their hand. So assume that every author is a preacher or a pastor, okay? And then they were eager to have any kind of resources available to them. Because when you go to hear and then you heard this sermon from this person, and then you will jot it down or you will remember, right? And then you go to this place and then you hear something, and then you collect all this data information. So Matthew's gospel, the author, he read Mark's gospel, because majority of Mark's gospel is included in Matthew's gospel and Luke's gospel. This is the only guess. How come almost I don't know how much, like a majority of Mark's gospel stories are in Matthew's gospel and Luke's gospel. So that's how Stuart came up with this. Maybe, author of Matthew and Luke, they had this Mark's gospel already. And then Mark's gospel was written first. Okay. I know scholars are still debating, because we don't have Mark with us. We don't have a Matthew with us. It's the only guess. Right. So probably they said Mark's gospel was written around the 70 AD. That is 40 years after Jesus' resurrection. So it was okay. It's Mark's gospel was written around the 70. Probably Matthew and Luke, both of them were written probably around the 85. So if Matthew's gospel was if you read the different scholars' work, it may be different, but majority scholars are kind of agree. Okay, this is a majority mainline scholarship. So you have 39 books in the Old Testament, and you have all these gospels. Matthew's gospel was written, but it is not placed on top of a New Testament. Matthew was placed on top. So the question is why? And here's why. Francis Watson said, well, because Matthew's gospel was written mainly for Jewish audience. They were the ones who have been waiting for Messiah to come, right? And then when you read all these Old Testament books, it all talks about, especially in the prophets, they were talking about the Messiah to come. That's the overarching theme, right? So Matthew, the Gospel of Matthew, one of the themes about Matthew's Gospel is Jesus came to fulfill the promise that was made throughout the pages of Old Testament. And then this audience is Jewish people who are all familiar with the Old Testament lessons. So it is very natural that Matthew's gospel is placed on top of a New Testament because this is kind of a continuation of this Old Testament stories. Old Testament story is about God's plan for the Messiah to come, right? For his people. And it's for Jewish people, right? And Matthew's gospel is for Jewish people. Luke's gospel is not for Jewish people. It's for the Gentile people. So that's why they put Matthew's gospel first, so that here's all the promise for Jesus to come throughout the pages of Old Testament, and then Matthew comes first because this is a continuation of all the promises before, right? And then Matthew said, here is the one we've been waiting for. He is the one who came to fulfill all the prophecies, fulfill the law and prophecies. That's why, because of that, chapter, the genealogy, the Matthew chapter 1 is very important. When we see this genealogy thing, it's not just the genealogy. It is like a summary of Jewish history, summary of Israel's history. So by mentioning all these names, he's not really talking about the names. He's talking about history of Jewish people, God's salvation history for his people. And then Jesus, and then when we read out the first verse, the chapter 1, verse 1, okay, I have an NIV, I think, here. So this is a genealogy of Jesus, the Messiah, the son of David, and the son of Abraham, right? And then, so by mentioning David and then Abraham, basically, he is mentioning the major two figures Jewish people admire.
Mm.
Remember David, how important David is, right? David is the symbol of a Jewishness. Remember when Hitler killed the Jewish people, 6 million Jews, right? Hitler made them wear a star, right, on their chest. David's the star, right? The horrible story. So David's the star. We know what it is. Two triangles together like this, right? And so David means a Jewishness, Jewish people. And then Jewish people ancestry start with Abraham. So intentionally Matthew's gospel start with Abraham and David. Very important. Jewishness, David and Abraham, right? And then here's an interesting thing. I have this Bible, this Bible has 4 different translations side by side. King James, it says, the book of the genealogy of Jesus Christ. It starts like that. The book of a genealogy of Jesus Christ, the son of David, the son of Abraham. That's a King James version, right? And then I have New International Bible. It says a record of the genealogy of Jesus Christ, the son of David and son of Abraham. I have RSV, Revised Standard Version, the book of a genealogy of Jesus Christ. So many translations start with the book or a record of a genealogy. And then here's an interesting point. The New Testament is written in Greek, right? When you see Greek translation, original Greek translation of this verse 1 of Matthew 1, the author of the book used this language. It's Biblos Genosios. The book of genealogy is Biblos Genesios. Okay, meaning is a book of Genesis. The genealogy, Genesis, a same Greek word. So it's interesting that, right?
Yeah.
The Matthew's gospel is when he's writing this gospel, he is saying this is a book of Genesis that everybody is familiar with.
Mm-hmm.
That way, he is trying to his people, Jewish people, that hey, I am rewriting book of Genesis. Or I am summarizing book of Genesis. I am summarizing our history. That's interesting, right? So basically genealogy is about their brief summary of their history. So we talked about, all these names that are mentioned in the genealogy. And then some names are not really good names, right? Some are good, right? Not everybody is good. So we talked about why, what was in his mind. His mind was, okay, looking at our history, you know, we cannot do. We cannot do well on our own because human beings, our ancestors, who we know who we are, there is no hope. Something has to happen, and it has to come from God. And the miraculous birth of Jesus Christ through the power of the Holy Spirit. We talked about it, right? Um,
That makes a lot of sense, actually.
Go
The
ahead.
genealogy, because other gospels don't have the genealogy. Only Matthew's.
Luke's gospel has it. By the way, so next week when we come back,
Mm.
please read genealogy in Luke's gospel. I believe it.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Third chapter.
Right, chapter 3. Good.
Okay. Oh, it has it. Okay.
That's something we're going to study next week. Okay, comparing with this. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, good. All right. So far, any question or comments so far?
No.
Okay, good. Here's the thing. When you go through the list of all these names, it's not really in Matthew's genealogy. It's not really genealogy of Jesus. It's the genealogy of Joseph.
Hmm.
That's interesting. Let's take a look at it, okay? Because, okay, so go through this and then, um, okay, verse 16. Prashant, read it, please.
And Jacob, the father of Joseph, the husband of Mary, of whom was born Jesus, who is called Christ.
Yeah. So until that moment, it is all Joseph's father and then Joseph's father's father, right?
Mhm.
Goes back to Joseph's ancestry,
Yep.
right?
Mhm.
It's natural. And Joseph and his father, grandfather, and all that. It's Joseph's story. And then he says, Joseph, comma, the husband of Mary, and it doesn't say father of Jesus. Do you see that?
Mhm.
Does it say Joseph, father of Jesus?
No.
No. He says,
Born Jesus, of whom was born Jesus.
yeah, he says, Mary, okay, he says, the husband of Mary, and Mary was the mother of Jesus, who is called the Messiah. Matthew's gospel doesn't say Joseph was the father of Jesus.
Mhm.
He says Mary was the mother of Jesus.
Mhm.
That's interesting, right?
Yes.
And so, in other words, Matthew's gospel never described Joseph as Jesus.
Hmm.
Why don't you open and look?
What are you in the book of Luke?
No. So we're still in Matthew, but I
Matthew.
want you to read, go to Luke's gospel,
You want me to go to Luke's gospel?
Luke chapter 2, verse 48, please. Luke chapter 2, verse 48.
Okay, I'm getting there.
Okay.
Okay. When his parents saw him, they were astonished. His mother said to him, Son, why have you treated us like this? Your father and I have been anxiously searching for you.
In Luke's gospel, Joseph is described as a father, your father, right?
Mm-hmm.
So for Luke's gospel, sure, Joseph is a father and Mary is a mother, right? All right. Prashant, please read John's gospel, chapter 1, verse 45. John's gospel.
Chapter 1,
Chapter 1, verse 45.
45. Philip found Nathanael and told him, We have found the one Moses wrote about in the law, and about whom the prophets also wrote, Jesus of Nazareth, the son of Joseph.
Ah, John's gospel also says Joseph. Well, Jesus is son of Joseph, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, then I'm going to read John 6 42. John 6 42. They said, It is not Jesus, the son of Joseph, whose father and mother we know. So Luke's gospel, John's gospel, they all describe Joseph as Jesus' father, but not in Matthew's gospel.
Hmm.
That's very interesting, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay. Then the question is this. Um, if this is if a genealogy that we have in Matthew's gospel is the genealogy of a Joseph, not quite Jesus. Um, oh, hold on 1 second. Okay, no. Let me start over. Okay, so Jesus Jesus is the son of a child of Mary, who was miraculously conceived through the Holy Spirit. The problem is, oh, okay. If he was miraculously born, if Jesus was born miraculously by the power of the Holy Spirit, that means he is not really the
The
son of
Father.
Joseph.
Mhm.
Yep.
Right?
Yes.
That's the question we could have. Even so, even so. So in Matthew's gospel, Joseph is Joseph's role is not as a father. He is described as a guardian. Remember when Herod was trying to kill all the children under age 2, Joseph and Mary took the baby to Egypt, right?
Mhm.
Mhm.
And that means Joseph was a protector of this family. He's a guardian. He is the descendant of this genealogy. He is the descendant of David and he's the descendant of Abraham, right? But this this son of David, let's say if we call Joseph as a son of David, if son of David is protecting and guard, he's working as a guardian of this family. And then he does all this work. He's doing a servant. He's working as a servant to fulfill the promise that was given to his ancestors. So Joseph's role is very interesting in Matthew's gospel. So officially, the Bible never says anywhere, any place, Joseph officially adopted Jesus as his son. No, he doesn't say that, right? In Matthew's gospel. So it's very interesting to see the role of Joseph. He's quiet. He listens to angel's voice. And then he doesn't complain. He does what he is called to do, protect his family, to, to be part of this God's salvation work for his people. Very interesting role.
Mhm.
Okay. Okay. And the thing is, in Matthew 2, chapter 2, verse 11, I'm going to read it, okay? Matthew 2, verse 11. It says, on coming to the house, they saw the child with his mother Mary, and they bowed down and worshiped him. We're talking about the Magi, right?
Mhm.
The Magi finally arrived at the location. so they could bow down and worship baby Jesus, right? How come we don't see Joseph here? Do you see Joseph there in that 11, verse 11?
No.
We only see Mary, right?
Mhm.
That's interesting. So Joseph is out of the picture. He is not worshipped.
Or that he's not
He is not worshipped.
worshipped. Okay.
They worshiped Mary and baby, not Joseph,
No, it says they worshipped him, it says.
baby Jesus.
Yeah, only baby Jesus, not Mary, right?
Right, right. But Mary was there too, right?
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah. But Joseph was not there, right?
Mm-hmm. It doesn't say anything about Joseph. Yeah,
Right,
correct. He's
right,
not.
right. So in other words, Joseph is out of the picture.
Mm.
It's very interesting. So it's a very interesting role of Joseph here in this book.
Would Joseph be considered something like a good stepfather?
Something like that. Guardian, protector.
Mhm.
But when you see chapter 1, verse 20, he is described the son of a David. Yeah, very interesting. But even if we don't see Joseph as Jesus' father. Oh, the genealogy is about Joseph's genealogy, right? So his role is very important here because of Jesus' genealogy. It's not really Jesus' genealogy. It's really Joseph's genealogy.
Mhm.
So Matthew's gospel spent majority of the time about Joseph's genealogy. Abraham, David, and all that, right? But here's an interesting thing. When you see from the beginning of the genealogy, we see Abraham, right? Who was Abraham's son? Isaac, right?
Isaac.
Right.
Mhm.
And then who was also important son to Isaac? Jacob.
Jacob.
Right. He had the two sons, but Jacob was the one who inherited, right? Birthright,
Mhm.
right?
Right.
Esau. And
Right, right. Not Esau, right? Then, how many children did Jacob have?
Maybe 12.
12, right? Right. So Jacob had 12 sons, uh, and who was the most important figure of all
Joseph.
the 12 children?
Joseph.
Joseph, right?
Joseph.
Because when you read Genesis, oh, the writer of Genesis spent 13 chapters to talk about Joseph, right? 13 chapters. That's amazing. We know the line of blessing: Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Joseph, right? Joseph is an important figure. But it's very interesting in this genealogy. He doesn't talk about Joseph. He talks about Judah,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
He says,
Yeah, yeah. Why is that? I don't know. Wow.
yeah. So in other
Missed
words,
Joseph, an important figure.
yeah. So verse 2 says, Jacob the father of, he doesn't say Jacob, father of Joseph. No, no. He says Jacob, father of Judah and his brothers.
Who's the oldest?
Um,
Is Judah the oldest, or why is he spelling
not
Judah?
Judah, not Judah.
Not Judah. Okay.
Because um, well, the reason is this. So basically, David is Judah's descendant, right? But
Mhm.
why not Joseph? Well, anyway, the point is this. Um, point is this. Matthew's gospel, the writer is intentionally avoiding Joseph's name. But thing is, the Joseph's father is a Jacob, right?
Jacob, yeah, exactly. I was like, same names.
That's the point. That's why this author is skipping Joseph's name, Joseph and Jacob, because he wants to emphasize Joseph and his father Jacob later on, right before Jesus was born.
Hmm. Same name, right? Joseph,
Same
Jacob, same
name.
name.
So
Yeah.
Joseph's father in the Genesis is as Jacob, right? And then Mary's
Later on.
husband Joseph, and then his father was a Jacob too.
Yeah.
So this gospel writer is very intentional when he's talking about this genealogy, the history. His intention is he wants to emphasize Joseph near the birth of Jesus. That's why he doesn't want to repeat that from the beginning. That's interesting, right? So the bottom line is, I mean, Joseph's ancestry is important. Jewish history is there. But okay, one way he seems to be ignoring Joseph. Sometimes he's out of the picture, right? He's not really described as a father of Jesus, but at the same time, he is an important figure because he is the descendant of David, Abraham, right? So in Matthew's gospel, uh, Jacob's role, I mean, no, Joseph's role is very hidden and then silent and then kind of not visible, but critical. So it talks about, remember John the Baptist? He said, he has to increase and I have to decrease. Remember that story?
Mhm.
So gospel writer is really, he's trying to portray Jesus, and then he's trying to make Jesus stand out, and everybody else has to decrease in a way. His father, sure, he helped him. He was a protector. He is really the descendant. He's part of this line. But what is more important is Jesus, not this line. Eventually. So basically, um, 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 and then Matthew doesn't, Matthew is not really interested in this. So all these names, it if you read First Chronicle, um, you will see all these names. There's all these names like a genealogy thing.
Robin was talking about it last Sunday.
Many, many names, right? And
Four
so
chapters.
I forget. Yeah, well, let's see
Four
here.
chapter of almost four chapters of names.
So this scholar says probably Matthew was reading those names from the First Chronicle. But Matthew is not really interested in all those 12 tribes of the Jewish people. His interest is focused on Jesus. Really, Jesus. Okay, let me mention this, and then we're going to wrap up. So remember the 14 generations thing? If you Google why 14 generation, why to the author of Matthew's gospel, why this is important. I mean, he's mentioning there are 14 generations, from um, let's see here, from
Abraham to David, David to exile to the
exile, and then from the exile to Jesus, right?
yeah, 14, 14.
And then if you read carefully from First Chronicle, this figure is mentioned twice, right? So it's not really, it's a 14 and 14 and 13, in fact. But he is mentioning one figure, um, Jeconiah. So he's counting Jeconiah twice. because he he is the last authentic king of Judah. But here's the main point. Why 14? Why number 14 is important? If you Google why 14 generations, that 14 is important in Jesus' genealogy, you will see all kinds of answers. And then I think here is an answer. Number 7 is very important in Jewish culture. It's a perfect number. So if you talk about 14, it's a twice number 7, right? Is a perfect and perfect.
Hmm.
And in Hebrew word, David. In English, we say David, right? David. 5 word. But in Jewish letters, 3 word. DWD. And each letter has a number. So David, the name David, if you add all these 3 numbers together, is 14. So basically, Matthew's writer is using this number 14, 14, 14 to emphasize the importance of a King David.
Hmm.
So by saying that, it's a little kind of uh, it's a very unique way of emphasizing the role of Jesus. So David, for Jewish people, David is the king, right? King, he's one of the most important figures, and then everybody respected David, right? And then by using these David's names 3 times, Matthew's gospel is emphasizing Jesus' kingly role as a son of the David. That's what this book says. So it's all about King David. It's all about Abraham. And then when it comes to genealogy, he's just mentioning this, but his focus is in Jesus as a king of Jewish people. And then he is the Messiah who came to us as a Messiah. He's a king of the kings. Jesus is the King of the Kings. I know David was a great king, but Jesus is King of the Kings. Triple
Pastor,
king.
Pastor David, the Hebrew name David, right? You said the DWD.
DWT, that's
Is
as
it
number 14.
14? Okay, okay.
So David is only 14. Jesus is 3 times on David.
14, yeah.
42.
Hmm.
Isn't it interesting? So how this writer of the gospel is really using this his literary skills and the imaginations and all this historical stuff to talk about how great Jesus is. Okay, so when we come back next week, we're gonna talk about how this genealogy different looks gospel and why. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Good
Okay.
night, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good
Thank
night.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.